Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve.
Steve, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Today, Steve and I are going to tackle Gotham by Gaslight. This is a period, kind of Elseworlds book before I think they were calling them that.
Yeah, this was the first unofficial Elseworlds story.
Was there ever anything done like this before this?
Batman had a whole series of like Elseworldy things going on before this, but it was just like in single issue format. It didn't sell too well, so not really.
If you'll recall, early on in DC, more Silver Age, like early Silver Age, there were a lot of things called imaginary stories, which were kind of like Elseworlds, where they could kind of tell any story they wanted to that would be out of continuity. But they weren't very often period stuff. A lot of the time they were just even more goofy than they would usually want to print. There were a lot of weird Superman ones.
Yeah, Batman had a couple ones, like What If Batman Was Sherlock Holmes? I think that was one for
Oh, so they did do some period ones. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it wasn't period per se. I think it was printed like early 1950s, so it was like Sherlock Holmes in the 1950s.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I'd like to get
it wasn't very good.
I'd like to get my hands on that. Yeah, well, sometimes those sorts of things are interesting to look at just for the sake of knowledge and education.
You see, the Batsuit had like a Sherlock Holmes cliched hat and a pipe and everything.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, like the hat had ears and everything.
What I always remember about Gotham by Gaslight right off is the cover, which is beautiful. This is Mike Mignola, and it's really cool to see Mike Mignola do anything Batman. And
yeah,
it's really cool they got him for this because obviously this kind of period stuff is right up Mignola's alley. And I always thought, I don't know if you have this, Steve, I just want to throw this out there really quick, that when I was a kid, I always thought, because I read this, when I was like 9 or 10 the first time, and I always thought that this cover, when you look at the Batsuit, is a little bit of an optical illusion, because if you look at it right, if you look at the mask, and then you look down, the bat, it looks like a normal Batsuit, where the bat is just in the center. But if you look at it kind of wrong, it looks more like an evil face, where there's like two eyes, and then a big mouth. Can you see it?
Oh, I see exactly what you're saying. Like his stomach area is the giant evil mouth.
It was years before I realized that was an actual regular Batsuit. I was very
I see what you mean.
Very confused by that. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. I thought that was very strange.
I'm not even sure if it was done by mistake, because Mike Mignola has some amazing pages in here, and I just wonder if he did something just for the fun of it.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but it's fascinating.
Like very clearly, the Joker panel that they have in here isn't for any story purpose, but it's just so Mike Mignola can draw a cool-looking Joker.
Yeah, but their explanation for the Joker's origin is really cool, and we'll get to that. So this was put out in 1989, and it takes place in the late 1800s, of course, because it's a Jack the Ripper story. And this is basically, if you've not read this is Jack the Ripper comes to Gotham basically at exactly the same time as Bruce Wayne first puts on the Batsuit and becomes Batman. But he does it in the late 1800s.
Right. I think it's set exactly in 1880.
Well, actually, the letter at the beginning is 1888, so it has to be later than that. It's 88 or 89.
Okay, it's probably 89 then, 1889, just 100 years back.
Just to be 100 years back, yeah. Is it interesting that, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but the villain in this, being Jack the Ripper, by the end, turns out to also be the guy who killed Batman's parents. And I think it's interesting that this was published in 1989, because exactly the same thing was done with the Joker in that movie.
I'm not sure if they did that one on purpose, but it is really interesting to think about.
I don't think so either, but it's quite the coincidence.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. They had a reference in here to Sigmund Freud.
Yeah, not just a reference. Sigmund Freud is one of the people that Bruce Wayne studies with when he goes off on his long quest to learn everything he can learn before he becomes Batman.
And I wonder about that, because Sigmund Freud is the most popular psychologist, but he's not especially well regarded.
Yeah.
Like people, even during his time period, don't think that he had the right idea. And this book has this really, it probably wasn't intentional, but it's a really cool idea of when Batman fights Jack the Ripper, he's fighting a guy that's using his subconscious desires to kill people, and Batman is trying to inhibit like any kind of primal instincts and just fighting against that ego, which was kind of significant for its whole philosophy.
Yeah.
Visually, this book is probably why you buy it, because every panel in this book is amazing.
Yeah, this thing is dripping with atmosphere, and I love just how raw and gritty it is.
Yes, me too. Almost so much that I don't like the new reprinting because they make it a lot cleaner.
Oh, do they really?
Well, they just like brighten up the colors a little bit, so it just doesn't feel as gritty as it was.
Now, is that the one that you're looking at right now?
Yeah, I've got a digital version. That's the old copy, but you can see like in this one, it just feels a little bit cleaner.
Oh wow, yeah. And then I've got the original printing, and it's not that way. No, I'm with you. I think the original's better.
Yeah, it definitely is. I really like the way that they use news clippings in this book.
Yeah.
Because Jack the Ripper was like one of the first, like, I don't want to say celebrity, but like real popular serial killers.
Right.
And he was a media sensation. Everyone was following to figure out what happened with Jack the Ripper. So to have news clippings for both Batman and Jack the Ripper is an interesting idea.
I like that this book feels like a product of its time. Like, if there were comic books printed, if it were this kind of comic book printed in the late 1800s, this is kind of what you might expect it would look like.
Probably so.
Which is kind of neat.
It's got the dialogue down just right. It doesn't feel too heavy-handed.
No, it doesn't at all, and I like how haphazard the dialogue looks, that it looks almost like actual handwriting.
Yeah.
And that was a cool way to go.
It looks extremely nice. And the Jack the Ripper letters look really cool.
And then Commissioner Gordon is really funny in this, because he's Inspector Gordon, and there's an actual commissioner who's above him who doesn't like Batman. And Inspector Gordon looks like Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, which is hilarious. And just a few years ago, we had Dark Knight Returns, and that Gordon loved Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah,
they're related.
I bet that was on purpose.
Yeah, it's still interesting to see. And it's cool because Gordon and Bruce are actually friends in this. Kind of like they were in the early Batman comics.
Yeah. And we're not talking Batman and Gordon, but in fact, when we first see Bruce go to Gordon, Gordon offers him a job and asks him if he wants to be a cop.
Yeah, I wonder if Bruce even had some of his training with Gordon.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It would make that line make a little bit more sense.
And he looks like Teddy Roosevelt, plus Teddy Roosevelt was a really physical guy, so it would make sense if they ever expanded on that.
So let's kind of streamline this a little bit and talk about the broader ideas in this and just the broader story. What do you think about just how all of this kind of cleanly lines up at the end? I mean, what we basically have here is Bruce Wayne goes back to Gotham after his training. He is with his uncle on a ship that he didn't know was going to be on that ship, by the way. And he rides back with him, and his uncle turns out at the end to be actually Jack the Ripper. And he frames Bruce for being Jack the Ripper, and he is also Batman all at the same time. And so that seems a little bit convenient that he decides to be Batman at precisely the same time that Jack the Ripper shows up. And not just that, but that Jack the Ripper happens to be someone he knows, and even more than being someone he knows, happens to be the person who murdered his parents, so that we can have a very clean kind of thematic connection between Jack the Ripper and Batman, and also between these two characters, and having the death of Bruce's parents being the thing that both creates Batman and Jack the Ripper, and it creates two men of obsession, but the one thing that separates them is that one wants to protect people and one wants to kill people, and it's both sort of out of love, but one is a real kind of love, and the other one is on the side of Jack the Ripper, is because he was in love with Bruce's mother, is more of the selfish kind of lusty love. What do you think about all that?
Well, do you really think Bruce is obsessive in this story? Because he reads a lot calmer, except when he's in jail, which is he's understandably angry. but I don't read him as being particularly obsessed.
No, I completely agree with you. I only said that because I think that's supposed to be the kind of thematic connection between them. But yeah,
that's probably true.
I think you're right.
It looks like he had the pre-planning of being Batman, because apparently Alfred had the costume ready before his training was even done.
Well, maybe obsessive isn't the right word so much as just he's still an extreme personality, and is considered that by everybody in this book. Not that anybody ultimately ends up knowing that he's Batman, but just the he even says, I like, by the way, that whole bit about how he won't tell everybody that he's Batman even after he gets arrested and sentenced to death, because everybody thinks he's Jack the Ripper, because admitting he's Batman would be like an admission of guilt. Everybody would assume that if he's Batman, he's also Jack the Ripper, because they're really extreme personalities. So I'm just saying that, at least extreme personalities, if not obsessed.
Although Jack the Ripper seems to have a lot of the typical Batman qualities. Like, Jack the Ripper has a reputation for fear. Like, everyone's afraid of Jack the Ripper. Yeah. They're not so much afraid of Batman as they are intrigued by him. So it's interesting to see Jack the Ripper being extremely obsessed and causing fear, and he's the bad guy.
Yeah, good point. And that's cool, because that's just inherently in the historical character.
Right.
And so what we're doing here is we're taking a character that exists in history and finding these interesting parallels with the traditional Batman that we know. It's hard to really read too much into the Batman that's here, because he doesn't do all that much.
Yeah, this feels a little bit like Edgar Allan Poe, where
I can totally see that.
It's a lot atmosphere. It's really, really atmospheric.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were making a video game with it at some point, but they scrapped it.
Yeah, and I wish they'd made it. It looks
easily
cool.
Dive into this, like with an
absolutely you could. Sure, yeah. Well, and it's one of those things where a short page count makes it to where you can't really delve real far into a lot of things and really flesh out a lot of stuff. And so there's a lot of story convenience in things to make this work. But really, I don't think that the ending is the thing that you read the book for.
Right.
This one, I still really like it. I just wanted to ask you what you thought about how coincidental it all is.
I mean, it's extremely convenient and a little bit contrived, but I don't dislike it. It feels right for the story.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Like, this doesn't try to be an overly realistic story or anything like that. It's just a really fun gothic story, which is why Mike Mignola was so perfect for it. You could probably look through this book without reading the words and still kind of get the same story. Yeah,
and I love when comics can do that, being that they're supposed to be a digital because they're supposed to be a visual medium. What do you think about the thing at the end where Bruce, in his rage at finding out that this is the guy who killed his parents, kind of throws his hands in the air and says, "I should kill you," and then he kind of just conveniently gets stopped by Gordon before that happens?
Yeah. I'm still not sure how to read into that, because this Bruce Wayne doesn't have... Not that I say he doesn't have a lot of depth, but we don't get into his head enough.
No.
So I'm not sure if this is like the young, unstable Bruce Wayne who's still on the edge and learning.
Yeah.
Or if it's like the rest of the book where he's just calm and collected and this one moment just kind of set him off the edge.
Well, I would hope that it's the former rather than the latter, because he's also not that great of a detective yet, right? Because he really is not putting two and two together in places that he ought to be.
Yeah, like I wonder what his training was for if he wasn't able to immediately pick up his uncle was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. I wonder that too. Or if at least he didn't suspect him, because here's a guy who was in Europe for a good amount of time, who you didn't know was going to be on this boat with you, that you found on this boat, and I'm not saying that it's bad that Bruce doesn't pick up on a nuance that the reader is supposed to by the end, but there's that cool foreshadowing moment on the boat that clues us in, if we're paying attention later on, where he's a womanizer, and he's saying crass things about women, and Bruce notes this, but then later on he never thinks about it again until he finds a picture of his uncle and his father, and he kind of and he finally figures out, oh, maybe that's Jack the Ripper. But yeah, it seems like he should have.
Like I wasn't able to buy that he would be able to tell who Jack the Ripper is from a photograph like that in this time period.
I just think he should have.
Like that.
No, I just think he should have suspected his uncle, earlier.
Yeah,
That would've made
definitely.
more
He's
sense.
not the best detective. Although I do like that this is a lot more mysterious. Like, this is an action-driven story.
No.
There is just a lot of dialogue and a lot of atmosphere and just detective work going on.
What is really cool is that one of the things that implicate, and of course he gets sentenced to death all on circumstantial evidence.
Right.
It's also kind of cool that is it Harvey Dent that prosecutes him?
I believe it is. Isn't it?
I thought it was. Yeah, it's at least somebody named Harvey, and I thought it was kind of cool that he's implicated partially because his father was a doctor, and the way Jack the Ripper kills these women is surgical.
Right.
And I thought that was kind of a neat place to go.
Yeah, it was definitely a really nice touch.
They're looking for these conveniences, for these kinds of any excuse they can come up with to make Bruce Wayne out to be the killer.
Yeah, because they're afraid of him.
Yeah,
they want Jack the Ripper out of the streets no matter what, and this is like, it's not media driven, but the media definitely has a big role. So if the media can ever print a story that says Jack the Ripper's been caught, it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, but what's really sad about it is, you know, they seem more interested in public opinion than they are in catching the actual killer. So if you kill Bruce Wayne and you really don't have anything like enough evidence to be sure that's who did it, because obviously that's not who did it.
Yeah.
And then the guy's going to just start striking again, and so you're going to be right back to square one. But you know, people do think this way sometimes.
You could almost stretch this into more of a satire, but it's just not spacious enough. Like, I think if they ever made a sequel to this, there'd be a lot more room for political stuff to go on. Because there are one or two throwaway lines about, like, industrialization and crime rates growing up.
There was a little bit there, and I appreciated what was there.
Yeah, and Gordon and Bruce have a really interesting, intimate relationship. Yeah. They seem a lot more friendly than I ever seen them before. Like, it seems like Gordon is going out of his way to make sure Bruce is not the killer. It's not exactly the densest piece, so it's really hard to just, like, figure anything else out to say about it.
Yeah, well, I did want to mention that thing about the Joker. There's, and again, that is kind of just this fun throwaway thing for the fans, but I like that it was there. You've got Gordon saying, you know, the city is really crime ridden and it's really awful, and take this guy for instance, and so he looks at this poster of the Joker, which is like this late 1800s version of the Man Who Laughs, and which was really cool. And so in this, the idea, and again, the Joker's not a character in this, but he doesn't play in the story, but we're told about him, and he's this guy that like marries women and kills them with drugs. So he's got a Joker toxin basically. And then he ends up trying to commit suicide after he's found out, but he doesn't take enough of his own drug, and so then his face gets paralyzed and he gets turned into Joker. I liked that. I thought that was great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could definitely see another story with Joker showing up.
Yeah, I wouldn't need it, but I just thought that for that as an origin of the 1800s Joker, that was kind of a cool idea.
Maybe I'm reading into it, but I just think it'd be funny that the last thing the Joker would do before he tries to kill himself is smile, and it just so happens to freeze that way, so maybe he's been insane before then?
Well, clearly there's got to be something wrong with him, because he's, you know, we're not told why he's killing these women.
Yeah, like, this book is very, very smartly subtle. You could really read into any of it, but there's just not enough evidence for any of it. So you could expand on this so well. I really wish they didn't abandon that video game, because this could lend itself very well to something like Arkham City. Yeah,
and I got to see some of the initial gameplay footage of what they were working on. It looked great.
It looked fantastic. This is a really nice open world.
And the suit is cool.
Yes, I love this bat suit. It looks. I think Damian's bat suit in the future actually has a little bit of the design going on from this book.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like it, except Damian has more like a bigger jacket, and this one is just a cape. But it feels really period piece. This is definitely a nice batsuit with all the blacks and the open slits for the eyes instead of the superhero whiteout.
Yeah, and this one is actually kind of like a cape and a jacket simultaneously.
Yeah,
because it's in two pieces. So it's got this like piece of a cape that goes down to his to the small of his back, and then it continues downward from there.
I still question just a little bit of why he would pick bats in this universe, because it's really convenient that bats just show up when his parents die.
Yeah, I wondered about that too.
I mean, it's not the kind of story where you question stuff like that, but at the same time, it is just really convenient on top of convenience on top of convenience.
Yeah, it does get away with a lot by being as short as it is and by being drawn by Mike Mignola, and I think that's a lot of, and by the language being so good. Like, the thing about it is, the difference with a story like this versus something else that is longer and more involved and still trying to get away with those kind of story conveniences is that I think this is well aware of the kind of story it is.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Have you ever read Mask of the Red Death by Edgar Allan Poe?
Yeah, it's been forever, though.
Okay, it kind of reminds me of that story where it's a lot of it's just atmosphere, there's ideas built into it, but there's just not enough substance to it for you to think too critically or for you to not think critically at all.
Well, that's the thing, is that I don't think that this is as much about the characters as it is about the ideas that are being perpetuated by the story that's happening. So, and just the novelty of it's Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. Batman vs. Jack the Ripper just sounds like a fun idea. And there is a sequel to this. And it expands on some of it, but it's just not that good. Without Mike Mignola's art, it doesn't get away with as much as it should.
Well, anyway, that's it for us. Thanks, as always, for watching the Comic Vault. And, Steve, come back with me again soon, and let's do another Batman thing. Have you ever read, I want to ask you about this, because it's another one of these kind of Elseworlds things. Have you ever read The Batman of Arkham?
Isn't that the one where Bruce Wayne owns Arkham's Asylum?
Yeah, and it's also, I think, a period piece. I think it goes back farther.
I think I have it laying around somewhere. I might have read it.
Yeah, it's Bruce Wayne, like, as a psychiatrist, and he owns Arkham, but he's also Batman. It's interesting.
Yeah. That book got a lot of press around the time Earth 1 came out.
Really?
Yeah, because because an Arkham was built into Bruce Wayne's backstory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't remember how old it is. I think it's like 91, 92. I mean, I think it's
probably around the same time as this book.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1990s.
Anyway, I was going to suggest sometime we do that, because I'd like to read that again.
Yeah, I got to find my copy of it, but that'd be great.
Cool. Well, anyway, thanks again, everybody, for watching. Sure appreciate it. And we'll see you next time on the Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Steve.
Happy reading.